it's been 2 weeks since we met. And I don't know if you're like I am, but that sometimes can seem like an eternity. You feel, where were we, you know? And but anyway, we're in Acts 19, and we finished 1 Corinthians 15 in our study last time. And so I really wanted us to try to get 16 completed, and maybe even going in and see how much we can get in Acts 19. I do want us to have a brief review. The first 12 chapters we want to remember of Acts deal with the spread of the church, spread of the gospel, primarily in what city? Jerusalem. Peter, the apostles, Peter primarily is emphasized, but all the apostles in those first chapters. And then 13 through 28, Paul's labors primarily among Gentiles. And so what we have in 13 and 14, Paul's first journey primarily in southern Galatia, the Isle of Cyprus. Second journey, primarily a year and a half at Corinth. And then the third journey, which is where we are now, Paul spends about 3 years where? In Ephesus. And so here we go, Charlie. We've seen this map. This is at the end of the second journey. He starts with Silas, picks up Timothy, Luke, and then he comes to Athens. And Timothy arrives, but Paul sends him back to Thessalonica. He goes to Corinth. Silas and Timothy come from Thessalonica, bring a good report and support from the churches in Macedonia. And so that's the occasion of the first Thessalonian letter. And a little bit later, we have the second letter written. Paul goes to Ephesus. We have a brief beginning of the church. And he promises that he would like to come back to them. He comes down to Caesarea, salutes the church in Jerusalem, then travels back to Antioch, and then we have the beginning of the third journey. And then he comes through the upper country toward Ephesus. And during the meantime, at the end of chapter 18, Apollos has come to Ephesus, and he teaches accurately what? Things about Jesus, but he knows only John's baptism. So Aquila and Priscilla take care of that, and then he wants to go to Corinth. So he does. In the meantime, Paul comes to Ephesus, and there we have chapter 19. He spends about 3 years, and we've already studied the letter to the Galatians, which would compose likely the 4 cities of southern Galatia, which are, you can see a couple there, Antioch, Iconium, Lystra, and Derbe. And then we have the fact that he mentions he wanted to stay in Ephesus till Pentecost. That's 1 Corinthians 16:8, because an effectual door is opened. A lot of good was being accomplished that we've seen. And so at some point during this time at Ephesus, some from Chloe's family come and said that there's divisions. And so and then they had questions. And so that's the occasion of the 1 Corinthian letter. Now this is where we've been. The reported conditions, divisions, immorality, going to law, questions relative to marriage in 7, and then 8 through 10, really 11 verse 1, eating things sacrificed to idols. In 11 through 14, instructions relative to assemblies and other spiritual activities. And then in 15, now concerning the gospel and argument for the resurrection. And now with instructions concerning the collection for needy saints and the close of the 1 Corinthian letter. Well, that's where we are. I wanted to go ahead, and I've got some notes on the slide that are actually in the little 1 Corinthian booklet that some of you had. Did you bring that booklet? Didn't some of you? Okay. If you'll notice, and I'm not going to use it too much, but I just wanted to kind of get the flavor of where we are. Before Paul closes the letter, he addresses the need for their giving on the first day of the week to provide for needy saints in Jerusalem. That's 1 through 4. He discusses his travel plans, and that from those travel plans we can know, that he was at Ephesus and what else he wanted to do. His travel plans, as well as those for Timothy and Apollos. He gives a needful exhortation summarizing earlier specific warnings throughout the letter. Years ago, I hadn't been preaching but about a year or so, I took verses 13 and 14 And kind of like some preachers, I just, emphasize, watch ye, stand fast in the faith, quit you like men, be strong, let all you do be done in love. And I just looked at each phrase and kind of went, it was like a scattergun. It was kind of like a fellow said he went everywhere preaching the word, went all over the New Testament. And as time passed, I thought, there was a better way of doing business. He's written these little short, terse statements to the Corinthians. Well, they could be watchful. Well, what did he say that they needed to be watchful over? And just go back and make a textual application. And I don't know if I've even done that since, but I thought, when you're younger, you don't put, at least I didn't. I don't know if y'all are this way, but when I was younger, I kind of just pinned, here's a passage that talks about this idea. The next passage, well, that's a passage that talks about this idea, and I didn't really put them all together and see a continuity. And I think it's much more powerful preaching to try to put it in its context. And anyway, that's 13 and 14. Then he provides directions concerning help with Stephanas, and as well as his house and others, and then sends greetings concluding with a warning. Another point that's in the 1 Corinthians booklet is that while these instructions concern a special need that had arisen at Jerusalem, that's the needy saints, it's obvious that there was a uniformity of practice involved in the command to give, since other churches are mentioned, as I gave order to the churches of Galatia. So while he did not in the Galatian letter say, by the way, on the first day of the week, I want every one of you to lay by him in store. If he had done that, and he did that in 1 Corinthians 16, it almost would be a what? I'm thinking about an R word.
Repetition.
What's that?
Repetition.
Repetition? Yeah, I was thinking about redundancy. It's the same thing, And so the wisdom and brevity of divine revelation is such that all God has to say by inspiration for us to do something, how many times does he have to say it? Once. Once is all he needs to say for us to get the idea. And that's basically what you have here. As I gave order to the churches of Galatia, so also do ye. So it's a universal practice. Now, we can extrapolate also from that idea this, and that is, whatever Paul told the Corinthians, do you think he told those at Ephesus? Philippi? Yes. The gospel, we say the gospel is a universal message. Go into all the world and preach the gospel. What part of the gospel? All the gospel. What's encompassed in all the gospel? The whole New Testament. And so, the reason I'm emphasizing this, guys, is because there have been so many progressives who've taken especially when it comes to women's role in the church and public preaching and that kind of thing. And they say, well, the only passages that you have any information on that is 1 Timothy 2 and 1 Corinthians 14. And then they'll say, well, those were just problems at Ephesus and Corinth. And then just dismiss everything Paul said. I don't believe that for a minute. This was universally taught. In fact, those passages, like in 4:17 of Corinthians, 7:17, he mentions that, what I teach here is what I teach in every church, every place. So that's why I really put that paragraph in. Yeah, somebody say something? Yes.
We also know they read the letters in other churches.
That's right. Good point. Colossians 4:16, they circulated those letters. Great point, Rachel. That's exactly right. Okay, and so earlier, funds had to be gathered in Antioch for needy saints in Judea, and Paul took wages from churches in Macedonia to do work at Corinth. So there had to be some kind of a working fund or treasury involved, though it's not specifically stated until now. I came across, I don't mean to seem like I'm beating a dead horse, but I've come across brethren who said, the only place, they didn't believe that you needed to give into a treasury. That's the bottom line. They didn't think that you needed to give just whenever some kind of a special need arose. And they thought, well, 1 Corinthians 16 was just to the Corinthians, and it was just for a special need. And well, there's always a need. There's a need for preaching, certainly, and other things. So I think a treasury is And then he said, as I gave order to the churches of Galatia. And then the third note, while the purpose for the collection is specifically mentioned for the saints, or we would say for benevolent purposes, due to other statements mentioned, money contributed could be used for evangelism as well as benevolence, though benevolence is all that's mentioned in the passage. As to why saints in Jerusalem were destitute, we're not told specifically. We do know that political troubles and famines had occurred, persecutions had arisen, to the degree that brethren had been stripped of their possessions and imprisoned. All that would have led to impoverishment. So here we are in 1 Corinthians 16. All right, comment or question before we get kicked off? Anyone? Jane, anything? Anyone else? Lynn? All right. Well, let's read 1 through 4. Randy, let's just start with you. 1 through 4, please.
Now about the collection for God's people. Do what I told the Galatian churches to do. On the first day of every week, each one of you should set aside a sum of money and keep it with this income, saving it up, so that when I come, no collection will have to be made. Then when I arrive, I will give letters of introduction to the men you approve and send them with your gifts to Jerusalem. If it seems advisable for me to go also, they will accompany me.
All right, thank you, Randy. All right, concerning the collection for the saints, not to go off on tangents, but this, how money is used in the church is really what distinguishes what we try to do from a lot of other churches. And it goes back to Bible authority. For what, the very fact that we take a collection up on the first day of the week, it's not because, we just think it's a good idea. It's biblically authorized. God commands that. All right, second question related. Well, how are we to use it once it's contributed? Do we do any way we want? Goes back to Bible authority. How does the Bible state local churches were to use their money? Well, here it's not for everyone in the community, but it's for the, yes, and he specifically mentions there in the early part, for the saints, for the saints. Brethren, during the 50s and the 60s, when a lot of the institutional problems were coming, they would emphasize, our brethren would emphasize that every time there is something mentioned relative to benevolence and the church, it's always for saints. It's always for saints or believers. Acts 2:44, 45, Acts 4:32 and 33, Acts 11:27 through 30, the brethren that dwelt in Judea. This passage, 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, every passage that deals with benevolence, even among that the church was to extend itself for, is for saints. Now, what about people who are not saints? Do we have no obligation toward them? If here's a next door neighbor, the house burns down or something, what? Yeah, but on a what kind of a basis? Individual basis. And so we're limited. In fact, even among Christians, keep your finger there, even among Christians, in 1 Timothy 5, verse 16, when Paul is dealing with widows, and widows, he states, are widows indeed. They have no family that they can support, or who can support them, rather. Just notice that. Verse 3, honor widows that are widows indeed. But if any widow has children or grandchildren, let them first learn to show piety to their own family. In other words, who is responsible benevolently for me first? Family. Myself and family. That's the first. But verse 5, she that is a widow indeed and desolate, hath her hope set on God, and gives these qualifications. And then again, individual responsibility in verse 8, but if any provides not for his own, especially his own house, he's denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. And then he gives more qualifications. Let none be enrolled as a widow under 60, and wife of one man, and so on. And then younger widows, verse 11, refuse. In other words, they can make it on their own. But then drop down to verse 16. If any woman that believes has widows, let her relieve them, and let not the church be burdened, that it may relieve them that are widows indeed. So here you've got two categories even of people who are Christians. Here's a woman, and I suppose it would apply to a man also, but usually the widows would be usually considered more of a vulnerable situation. But here's a widow, and she's got family, and she has needs. Who's to meet them? The family. Here's a widow who has no family, and she's faithful. I think you could summarize all those qualifications. She's faithful. Then she can be supported by the church. By the church. That widow who's a widow indeed, she meets these qualifications. And so you have that, and it's so, to me, it's so plain, it's so simple that, and then there are questionable cases that come, well, and then there's always a safe route to pursue. I can help myself personally, others can help personally, and anyway, a comment or question on any of that? Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question about, starting in chapter 7, now concerning the things of which you wrote me. So here in chapter 16, it's concerning the collection for the saints. What did they write Mass call?
Yeah, that's a good question.
How to do the collection, or do we need to be involved in the collection?
It could have been either or both, I think, Jane. I'm just not certain. I thought I might have had, well, I did have a note that, let's see. Yeah, note 4, as to why saints in Jerusalem were destitute. Oh, that's why they were destitute in Jerusalem. I don't know.
There may be no way to know, but it just struck me, that's the first time I ever noticed. It's one of those now concerning.
Yes, exactly. Now concern, and so he changes subjects and begins to talk about that, and evidently, they ask about it, some question about it. You might could assume, is it the first day of the week or what? Yes, sir.
Just got a question. What about a widow that's family that's withdrawn from her because she's a Christian?
Yeah, I think she'd be a widow indeed. Yeah, that's a good question. And there's some cases we know that they've just got derelict families who will not take care. And it looks like 1 Timothy 5 is talking about somebody who has opportunity to be taken care of by family, and the family's willing to do it. Yeah, great idea there, Brother Charlie. Anybody else on any of this? When you find out why they ask, what questions they ask, let us know. There you go. Okay, real good. We've got a question or two here on page 55 of our Acts booklet on number 23. Chapter 16 instructs concerning a collection, then closes the letter. What Paul commanded the Corinthians was the same as he had given to churches where? Galatia, right. And what was the church to do, when, and for what purpose? All right, they were to what? Lay by in store. When is first day of the week, and why? Yes, that for the saints, that there be no gatherings or collections when he came. If I can remember the 4P, the alliteration, someone has suggested that in these passages you have planned giving, it's provident and purposeful and periodic. It's frequent. It's every first day of the week. Have you ever been asked, what about just giving once a month? Have you ever been asked that question? I've been asked that several times. And my usual stock reply is the safe approach is just to go ahead and if you've paid monthly or bi-weekly or however, and you've made this much in the previous month, this is how much you've prospered. And then you say, well, I'm going to start. I don't say this always, but if you started at 10% and went up, people talk about tithing. If you went up from there, and then what you could do is just take the total of it and then divide it by however many Sundays are in the month. And then you know, rather than just, and that way you're giving every first day of the week.
That's what I used to do when I worked.
Yeah, I think that's wise, Rachel. I do. Somebody asked me just about a week ago about what about giving to a different congregation. Maybe somebody's away and so they're giving to maybe their home congregation. Well, I think that's wise, but it doesn't hurt to give something wherever you are if the congregation is faithful. And I look at it from another point of view, that everyone, especially young people, everyone sees what we do. And whether or not I give or not give, people watch. And it looks like to me that, you know, if I could give some cash at a place where I want to go in a meeting, I usually either try to make up for it when I cut back or put 2 checks in or do something. But when I'm somewhere else, I'll give something because I think there's a passage on that. Look over at Matthew 17. Just a second, Rachel.
No, you're fine.
Matthew 17. The apostles were coming to Capernaum, and they had been during the periods of retirement, you know, and they're coming back, and they come to Capernaum. This is 17:24. And they that received the half shekel, that was the temple tax, you remember, it's a half shekel from every person. They came to Peter and says, does your teacher pay the half shekel? And he says, yes. And so when he came into the house, Jesus spoke first to him, that is to Jesus, or Jesus spoke to Peter rather. What thinkest thou, Simon, the kings of the earth, from whom do they receive toll or tribute? From their sons or from strangers? Well, the obvious answer, from strangers. Jesus said, therefore the sons are free. That is, the sons of the kings don't have to pay taxes, toll or tribute. But here's the application: lest we cause them to what? To stumble. Go thou to the sea, cast a hook, and take up the fish that first comes up. And when you open his mouth, thou shalt find a shekel. That take and give unto them for me and thee. Now, obviously, the teaching is, did Jesus have to pay the temple tax? No. For whom was the temple created, or built, rather? For the Lord. Yeah, for Jesus, for God. And so he didn't have to pay that, and I think that's the illustration. The sons of kings, do they pay? No, they're special. It's really for their support. Likewise, there was no need really for Jesus to pay the temple tax. He was exempt, we might say. However, to keep anybody from stumbling, he said, you know, go into the sea, cast in your hook, and a fish came out, and there'll be a shekel in its mouth. You give that for me and thee. And so I think there's a great lesson there. You know, people watch what we do, and there may be something that we need to do for influence sake that we might not actually need to do, you know, insofar as from a technical sense. Robin, you look like you want to say something.
I have seen and heard before that, says every one of you.
Yeah.
Some family members think that either the wife writes a check and the husband writes a check.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that?
Yeah. For a long time, Lee and I did that. I'd write one check and it'd cover both of us. And then after a while, we decided that she said, I just feel like something coming from me and so, and of course, we teach our children. We taught Wes the same thing, that if you make $15, $20 cutting a yard or something, then you need to take some of that and just get used to the idea of giving, and on an individual. And coming back to your question, on an individual basis, yeah. And let each one of you lay by him in store. I know that's safe. And in cases where we don't make anything, say ladies who are keepers at home and they do a lot of work but they don't make money at it, then obviously God does not expect out of us something that we don't have. But I do know a couple, older couple, they're both deceased, and She was a worker at home and did not have her own income, but she wrote her own check. She had some, you know, and I think they just kind of worked that out so she could actually give. If I mention their name, you'd know them. But I think there's always a safe route to pursue, a safe course, and we want to take that. All right, anybody else? Good question. Yes, ma'am.
All right, I had heard something before, and now I'm feeling a little bit confused about. I heard people say that it might not be a good idea to give when you're away, because the way you know a place is faithful is after you've been there for a while. So if you give to a place when you're only there on one Sunday, so you really don't know what's going on at that place, it might be unwise to give
Yeah,
there.
if you didn't know. If
Yes.
you didn't know, yeah. And if
I mean,
didn't,
I agree with everything you said about
Yeah.
presence and giving off, doing it for the sake of affecting other people. But on the other hand, if you're only there one Sunday, how do you know that what's going on all the time?
Well, I probably would be real careful if I didn't know what was going on
Okay.
to even be
Okay.
there to start. Yeah, I would want to be pretty confident in the congregation before I lent support in any way to them.
Okay.
Yeah, Carol?
Okay, I'm glad we're on this subject because we had a homeless person that was attending our congregation and he got baptized and everything. He has passed away now, but I remember he got baptized and everything. So I want to know, are we expect him to give? I mean,
If he
since
doesn't
was
have
homeless?
anything, no.
Yeah.
As you were prospered, proportional. If he has nothing, he can't give any. You can't give what you don't have. And I think, you know, even in 2 Corinthians, turn over real quickly to 2 Corinthians 8. Paul makes a point. In 8 and 9 of 2 Corinthians, he's encouraging the Corinthians after, in fact, he says about a year, that's down in verse 10, they began to take up this collection about a year ago, he says. In verse 11, beginning verse 11, read that with me. But now complete the doing also, that as there was the readiness to will, so there may be the completion also out of your ability. That's key. For if the readiness is there, it is acceptable according as a man hath, not according as he hath not. That's very significant there. God does not make us do things that we cannot do, but whatever we can do, we should do. And then he goes on to say, for I say not this, that others may be eased and ye distressed, but by equality, your abundance being a supply at this present time for their want, that their abundance also may become a supply for your want, that there may be equality. You're helping them now when they are in need, as they could help others when they were not in need. And there's a type of an equality does that make sense? But I think that is the case, Carol, to answer the question. If we don't have, we're not obligated. We can't, because we don't have anything to give. Yeah. All right.
Well, brother,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have one more question. I want to ask if we, when it comes to time for our boss to give us a raise,
Right.
I'm wondering, since we are making more.
Yeah, need to
are
give
we-
more.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Yeah.
are we required to give more?
Yes. Well, it's a as ye are prospered. And if I got what about an inheritance? We've had an inheritance from my mom, and I tried to spread some. I did a whole lot of thinking about that. What should I do? How should I do? And say, for instance, you sold something, you came in some money. I think it ought to be reflected in our giving. We were just in Acts 4 here at Pleasant Grove. Acts 2 and Acts 4. They sold houses and lands when there was a special need in order to satisfy those needs. And I made the point in a class here on Sunday or Wednesday that it looks like to me you have two different, I say they're all not different. You have two givings. You have the frequent first day of the week as you prosper. And that's ongoing to take care of needs that can arise, the preaching of the gospel and other things. Then you have emergency giving. Acts 2, Acts 4, when they actually sold. Well, you can't always sell houses and lands. You run out of houses and lands to sell. But here's an emergency thing. What about a rental house? What about an old car that you got, that you don't even keep up the tag on it? You got other things that you can sell in order to bring maybe some stock. A lot of brethren in our day and age have stock and funds. Could you sell some stock and take $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 and help? I think that's the kind of thing that we need to think about. Or if we have a windfall, like what you're talking about, Carol, I think it ought to be reflected in our giving. There's an elder that I grew up with. I say I grew up with. That doesn't sound right, does it? Where I was when I was growing up, he was an elder. That clarifies it. He said he felt like, and he of course did not know this, but he said, I feel like that there would be a lot of people, members of church, lost because of giving. He was a very extremely liberal giver, and I know what he gave me. And he took it extremely seriously. And it's not just get out your wallet and the first thing that comes out you throw in. It's planned. It's purposed or proposed. Planned giving is proportionate. Here's my income last month, or here's what I've got, and that's off the top. Certainly we have taxes, but it's off the top. It's not, well, I had the house payment, the boat payment, car payment, and our vacation's costing several $1,000s, and then now let's say, well, I think I got $2 or $3 to get. No, it needs to come off the top. I think we make seek ye first His kingdom and all these things.
I think it's basically the key there is as you prosper. So if you prosper more,
Yeah.
you give more.
Yes, yeah. That's exactly right. And it could very well be that, those of us who are retired and no kids at home, maybe our house is paid for, we're going to be able to give a percentage that's higher over what we make than maybe here's a couple that just got married, and maybe 3 or 4 years down they got 2 or 3 kids and medical, and they don't make, and so all the expenses make it where that are necessary expenses make it where the percentage that they give may be a little bit lower than somebody else. So it all depends on that. Isn't it interesting? God just didn't tell us what percentage. He just told us as prospered, and that is really the nature of New Testament. That the spirit of love for the Lord and love for His cause and love for Jesus Christ, love for the souls of men, that's what motivates us, should motivate us. And then what principles He gives that deal with giving or anything else, then we take that motivation of love and wanting the best and what can save somebody's soul and how much good can we do. Those are the ideas that drive what we do in the other place. So when somebody says, well, just tell me how much I've got to give, well, I'd question their love for the Lord. How much do they really love the Lord? And okay, comment, question? Yes, ma'am.
Full of questions today, because money and finance is an interest of mine. But since you said that He did not, the Lord did not specifically
Right.
say how much, would you say it is an individual decision?
Yes.
Would you
Yeah.
say so?
We need teaching on it, and I think what we're talking about with each other is teaching on it, and yet it comes down because our circumstances are individual. Not everybody has the same circumstances. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see. Do we have anything else on that? No. Let's move on. Unless you have anything else. I had a series of 3 lessons I gave on giving. There's a lot in the New Testament, like the Bible, but there's a lot in the New Testament. Even if you take the life of Jesus, the widow, the Sermon on the Mount, there's just so much in the teaching of Jesus that that deals with this. All right, let's talk about Paul's travel plans and read that. Janice, if you will, 5 through 9.
Now I will come to you when I pass through Macedonia, for I am passing through Macedonia. And it may be that I will remain or even spend the winter with you, that you may send me on my journey wherever I go. For I do not wish to see you now on the way, nor hope to stay a while with you, if the Lord permits. But I will tarry in Ephesus until Pentecost, for a great and effective door is open to me, and there are many adversaries.
All right, thank you, Janice. We've got a question on this. Number 25, Paul was where while writing the letter? And we know this for certain. He was at Ephesus, right. So his plan was to leave, he's at Ephesus, and without going to the mount, he would go up into Macedonia and then come down into Achaia. Achaia is Greece, where Corinth was. And he says, I want to go through Macedonia and come to you and possibly even do what? Verse 6. Stay during the what? The winter, that you may set me forward on my journey wherever I go. But he says in verse 8, I will tarry at Ephesus until Pentecost. Where would he want to go for Pentecost and why? Jerusalem, because there would be what? That's right. He would have more of an audience to preach. Exactly right. And then there's a tie, I think, in verse 9, back to our point in Acts 19. For a great door, now I'm reading, as you know, from the American Standard. I want to call on somebody else in just a moment. For a great door and effectual is opened unto me, and there are many adversaries. A great door and effectual. The New American Standard says what, Robin?
Wide door for effective service.
Effective service, yes. There is an open door at Ephesus, and I can be extremely effective and efficient in my service here. However, there's what? Or there are adversaries. There are many adversaries. And so we think about first Acts 19, and who is an adversary that stirs up a riot against Paul?
Demetrius the silversmith.
There you go, Rachel. Demetrius the silversmith. And evidently Paul's there 3 years, and he's there in the synagogue and in the schoolhouse of Tyrannus, and things are going, all Asia hears the word, verse 10. So great things are happening. Even those who had magical books brought them, and they had a big bonfire, and the price came to be about 50,000 pieces of silver. So great, and yet, then these travel plans are given in Acts 19, and then all of a sudden the rest of Acts 19 deals with Demetrius stirring up the real problem against Paul. And so it seems like that's what he's referring to, that so much good is being done, but I've got some adversaries. And then we'll see that those adversaries stirred up the multitude to the point that Paul had to leave under duress at the end of 19. All right, let's see. Let's keep reading. 10 through 12, the travel plans for Timothy and Apollos. Well, we remember Apollos, had gone, had come to Corinth. Aquila and Priscilla taught him, and then he wanted to go to Corinth. Well, now, let's read this, 10 through 12. Lynn, if you would.
And if Timothy comes, see that he may be with you without fear, for he does work with the Lord, as I also do. Therefore let no one despise him, but send him on his journey in peace, that he may come to me, for I am waiting for him with the brethren. Now concerning our brother Apollos, I strongly urged him to come to you with the brethren, but he was quite unwilling to come at this time, however. He will come when he has a convenient time.
Okay, so Apollos was at Corinth, so it's obvious that at some point he comes back to Ephesus, right? And Paul wants him to go back, and he says, not right now. All right, so if Timothy comes, see that he be with you without fear. Being a younger man, perhaps they would have not had the kind of appreciation for Timothy. Keep your finger there. Go back real quickly to chapter 4. Paul mentions Timothy and his coming to them. Look at 17. Whoever has 17 first, read it. 4:17.
For this reason I have sent to you Timothy, who is my beloved and faithful child in the Lord, and he will remind you my ways which are in Christ, just as I teach everywhere in every church.
All right, there you go back to the universality of the gospel. But Timothy would come to them and remind them of all that Paul had said. All right, let's turn back to 16 now. So Timothy, he says, the plans, if Timothy comes, see that he be with you without fear. All right, and then let's see, number 26, Paul wanted who to come? We answered it. Timothy, and be treated how? Without fear, yes. Just like they would treat him. All right, then 13 and 14 are those little passages, those terse commands that I mentioned a while ago. Let's see, Rachel, 13 and 14.
Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Let all that you do be done in love.
Yeah, you know, be watchful. All right, watchful for what? You develop your own lady's sermon on this. Think about the whole book. Be watchful not to get involved in what? 1 through 4. Divisions. Be watchful that you practice discipline. Chapter 5. Be wise in your dealing with brethren. 6. Think before you act on marriage. In 7. Be careful. Be watchful. I mean, you could expand all that. Stand fast in the faith. What does that mean? Be firm. That's right. Be firm. Not as some there were. Quit you like men is translated how in some other translations. Quit you like men.
Brave.
What's that, Karen?
Brave.
Be brave. Any other translations of it?
Act like men.
Act like men. Yeah, quit is the idea of growing up to be like men. It's interesting in chapter 14, he said, in malice be babes, but in mind be men. Malice be babes, but in mind, malice be babes, but in mind be men. Grow up, quit you like men. Be mature. Remember in 1 Corinthians 3, I could not feed you with meat, but with milk, for you're carnal, Grow up out of that. Then the next phrase, the end of 13, simply be what? Be strong. And yet, all of this is covered by what? The 4-letter word? Love. Let all you do be done in love. I made a point on that. When Paul was rebuking them for not having disciplined the fornicator in chapter 5, when he was rebuking them for their division in 1 and 2, was that, people say that's not very loving. How would you answer that? Love demands what? Love demands discipline. Love demands that we do what is in somebody's best interest. That's truly what love is. And, even in Hebrews 12, he says, because you are sons, God deals with you not as illegitimate, the American Standard says bastards, but as with sons. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens. The Lord loves those he disciplines. And then he talked about the fathers of our flesh chastened us in what seemed good to them at the time. But he, God, for our profit, he says. And so, even a spanking is an exhibition of love that the father may have, or mother, for the child. And our world, if you disagree with someone, say, I believe you're wrong about that, and this is why, well, you're not loving, no, that's the farthest thing from the truth. If we feel like somebody is wrong morally or doctrinally, Paul said in Galatians 4, I think it's verse 16, have I become your enemy by telling you the truth? The truth? No. He was their friend, but he had a whole lot of bad things to say about those in those in the Galatian churches. Yeah, did you have something, Janice? Oh, okay. You were straightening your hair, weren't you? Okay. All right, let's move on then. 15 through 18, we mentioned instructions concerning Stephanas as well as others. Whose time is it? Sister Eleanor, 15 through 18.
I beseech you, brethren, you know the house of
Stephanas.
That it is the first fruits of Achaia, and that they have addicted themselves to the ministry of the saints, that ye submit yourselves unto such, and to every one that helpeth with us, and laboreth. I am glad of the coming of Stephanas, and Fortunatus, and Achaicus, for that which was lacking on your part they have supplied. For they have refreshed my spirit and yours. Therefore acknowledge ye them that are such.
All right. Some of these closing salutations, you kind of get a personal touch to all of this. I beseech you, you know the house of Stephanas. They are the first fruits of Achaia. That means they were some of the first ones. What? Converting. That's right. The first fruits of Achaia. And they have set themselves to minister to the saints, and your translation said they are addicted, isn't it? That's a great word for it. People who are addicted to something do it what? All the time. They just, how can I help this way? And it's not a case, well, I did it last time, I'm going to be off for a while. No, it's what all can we do on an ongoing basis? Just like anything addicting, that's really the idea behind the word. They've set themselves, they're placing themselves to be able to do that. That ye also be in subjection unto such. And that is, you comply, you help them in whatever way. How can we be of benefit to that? And the coming of Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaicus, that which was lacking on your part, they supplied. I was going to call your attention. Evidently, I've got this on page 74 of the Corinthian booklet, number 16, who all had evidently brought the letter with questions to Paul, and what had they done for Paul. Evidently, these fellows he mentions in these passages, the coming of Stephanas, Fortunatus, and Achaicus, that it's possible that you had Chloe's family, chapter 1, it's been signified unto me by those of the household of Chloe that there are divisions. So they had said some things, and it could very well be that Stephanas, Fortunatus, and Achaicus brought additional questions, and that Paul writes this letter and answers all of that. But that seems to be, and then perhaps something that helped Paul out. We just don't know what it was. What all was lacking on your part they supplied. For they refreshed my spirit and yours. Acknowledge ye therefore them that are such. That is, appreciate them. What does the New American Standard say in verse 18 again, Robin?
For they have refreshed my spirit and yours, therefore acknowledge such men.
Yeah, acknowledge such men. All right. And let's finish up. Let's see, Karen, 19 through the end, if you would.
The churches of Asia greet you. Aquila and Priscilla greet you heartily in the Lord with the church that is in their house. All the brethren greet you. Greet one another with a holy kiss. The salutation with my own hand, Paul. If anyone does not love the Lord Jesus Christ, let him be accursed. O Lord, come. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you. My love be with you all in Christ Jesus.
All right. It's interesting in the closing of these letters, as well as the beginning, grace is a common word. Grace, charis. What does grace mean?
Unmerited favor.
Yeah, unmerited favor. The idea of, I think best I can illustrate it maybe when we talk about someone as a gracious host in a home. Well, we all know what that means. What would somebody who's a gracious host and you're sitting around a table, what are words you would be out to hear?
Get you something
Can I get you something to drink? Do you need some ketchup on this? Does anyone want to pay? What about some more tea? In other words, you're looking to help in some way. Favor is the idea. I'm reminded in Acts 2:47, praising God and having favor with all the people. That's the same word, charis, grace. Having favor with all the people. And then great grace was upon them all, Acts 4. Great grace. Not God's grace, that's universal. But great grace was upon them. There is an attitude that I think I have missed on, or I see missing in some congregations, especially when Lee and I lived in other places and outside the South. I don't mean that brethren in the North are not this way, but it just seems like there's some differences. That if someone is just really apt to be set off by someone, in other words, they're just looking to pick on something, versus, hey, how's the day go? Something I can do to help, the idea that we're always trying to be helpful, not hurtful. We're always trying to what can I do in this situation to be more helpful. When that is the attitude of everybody, boy, it's going to evaporate a lot of problems. It's going to evaporate strife, evaporate pride. It's going to be, because really that idea of grace or favor is actually associated with the L-O-V-E word. I mean, you can't have one without the other. If someone really loves, we talk about love being selfless desire for the betterment of the other party. Well, that's similar to grace. And it's all through the letters. Paul always expressed God's grace. He does it in the first chapter. He does it at the close. He did it in the Galatian letter. Everywhere you go. And it's another interesting idea. Grace to you and peace from God and the Lord Jesus Christ. That's a usual salutation. Grace was more of a Greek greeting. And peace, what? More of a Jewish, a Hebrew. Shalom, And so you have both in mixed congregations, what's common among Greeks, what's common among Jews. We want what's in your best interest. That makes sense to everybody. When that's the attitude of people, then, boy, a lot of good can be accomplished. All right, and the last one here we have number 27. Final admonition summarizing all he had said included what? Well, we answered that a while ago. Be watchful. What else? Stand fast. Be like men. Be strong. And let all you do be done in love. All right. Who is with Paul here who salutes them in 19? Yes, Aquila and Priscilla. Or Prisca is does your translation have Prisca? There's kind of like a Mott is, abbreviation for Martha. Bob for Robert, the Prisca for Priscilla. It's just an abbreviated form of it. The churches of Asia salute you. Aquila, Prisca salute you much in the Lord, with the church that is in their house. Yeah. To run the references, we're not going to now, but to run the references on that great couple, we learn about them in Acts 18, the first couple of verses. Paul resides with them because they were the same trade, tent makers. Then when they go with Paul down to Cenchrea, then eventually over to Ephesus, then there's Apollos who's mistaken. They help him, so they're evangelistic, and they deal with error. So and then they're hospitable. They have and there's a great lesson here, and I've made this point in talking with when I have an opportunity to talk with a couple that's planning to get married. Unity. I tell you, when you are hospitable, there has got to be unity. Both people have to be on the same page, or it falls apart. Insofar as having people in your home is concerned, having a church meet in your home, that's the zenith, as it were, of hospitality. You want people to come in and get, yeah, wouldn't it have been wonderful to have known that couple? I think that must have been some wonderful, wonderful couple. And even in the Roman letter, in the 16th chapter, Paul mentions them and says they hazarded their lives for me, and they're worthy. All right, any comment or question on anything on 16? All right, well, we didn't get back to Acts 19, but we'll just save that for next week, Lord wills, and we'll resume the narrative and in the next page and go there. Any comment or question? All right, where was Paul when he wrote 1 Corinthians? Ephesus. Can you remember the main divisions? 1 through 4, division over preachers. 5, problems with fornication. 6, going to law. 7, marriage. 8 through 10, things right. 11 through 14, spiritual activities, assemblies. 15, resurrection. And 16, collection for the saints and closing. Okay? So you're ready to charge out with 1 Corinthians, right? All right. Thank you for all your help. Let's conclude with prayer.